The orange sun of Kepler 442 cast long shadows across the rocky surface of its third moon. Dr. Elena Rodriguez wiped sweat from her forehead as she watched the excavation. Robots dig deeper into the ancient site. She had been working on this dig for 6 months now, and every day brought new surprises. The site was unlike anything they had seen before. Most alien ruins followed patterns that made sense. The Zephyrians built with crystal formations. The Vector made biomechanical structures. The Lumini left energy patterns burned into stone. But this place was different. The architecture seemed to flow like water, yet it was harder than diamond. The symbols on the walls moved when nobody was looking directly at them. "Dr. Rodriguez, we have found something big down here," called out Dr. Crickstall, the lead victor. Scientist. His insect-like face clicked with excitement as his 4 arms gestured toward the deep excavation pit. Elena climbed down the metal ladder into the dig site. The artificial lights revealed a massive chamber that the robots had just uncovered. In the center sat something that made her breath catch in her throat. It was a spacecraft, but not like any ship she had ever seen. The vessel was about the size of a small building. Its hull seemed to shift between different colors as the light hit it. Sometimes it looked like metal, sometimes like flowing water, and sometimes like living tissue. Strange symbols covered every surface, arranged in patterns that hurt to look at, for too long. Jake Morrison stood at the edge of the chamber, staring at the craft with wide eyes. He was the human representative on this joint expedition, sent by Earth's Science Council to observe and learn. Jake was young for such an important mission, only 32, but he had a gift for understanding alien technology that even surprised the aliens themselves. "This is impossible," whispered Dr. Zira, the Zephyrian team leader. Her crystalline body rang like a bell when she was excited, creating beautiful musical tones. "The energy readings make no sense. This craft should not be able to exist." The Lumini representative, a being of pure energy named Fluxara, floated closer to the ship. Where most beings would use words, Fluxara communicated through light patterns that appeared in the air. The patterns showed confusion and wonder. Alana pulled out her scanner and pointed it at the craft. The device immediately went crazy, showing readings that changed every second. The material composition keeps shifting. One moment it reads as some kind of metal, the next as organic tissue, then as pure energy. Dr. Crickstall approached the ship with several scanning devices. His people were known throughout the galaxy for their ability to interface with any technology. The Vector had biomechanical implants that could connect to almost any computer system. "Let me try to establish contact with the ship's computer," he said. The insectoid scientist extended several thin cables from ports in his arms. He touched them to the ship's hull, and his eyes glowed as the implants tried to make a connection. After several minutes, he pulled back with a frustrated click. "Nothing. The ship does not respond to any of my interfaces." "Perhaps it requires harmonic resonance," suggested Dr. Zephyra. The Zephyrians could create sound frequencies that often activated ancient machinery. She began to sing, her crystalline body creating tones that made the air itself vibrate. Ship remained silent and still. Fluxara tried next, sending waves of energy toward the craft. The Lumini were beings of pure consciousness inhabiting energy fields, and they could manipulate electrical systems with their thoughts alone. Bright lights danced around the ship as Fluxara attempted to wake its systems. Still nothing. "This is most unusual," Dr. Crickstall said, his mandibles clicking in thought. "In all my years of archaeology, I have never encountered technology that refuses all contact. Even the most ancient ruins respond to at least one of our methods." Elena set up her own equipment, human-designed scanners that worked differently. From alien technology. Human devices were often considered primitive by galactic standards. but they sometimes picked up things that more advanced scanners missed. The age readings are incredible. This craft is at least 5 million years old, possibly older. 5 million years? Dr. Zephyra's musical voice rose in pitch. That predates any known galactic civilization. Even our oldest records only go back 3 million years. Jake walked slowly around the ship, not saying much. While the others set up their equipment and ran tests, he simply observed. There was something about the craft that called to him, though he could not explain what it was. As he moved closer to the hull, he noticed something strange. The symbols on the surface seemed to pulse with a very faint light when he was near. The pulsing was slow and steady, almost like a heartbeat. He mentioned this to the others, but when they looked, they saw nothing. Perhaps the lighting is playing tricks on your eyes, suggested Elena. Human vision sometimes sees patterns that are not really there, but Jake was certain of what he saw. The symbols were definitely reacting to his presence, though only when. He was looking directly at them. He walked around the ship again, and the symbols followed his movement, glowing softly wherever he focused his attention. Hours passed as the alien scientists tried. Every method they knew to activate the craft, Dr. Krickstall attempted 17 different interface protocols. Dr. Zephyra sang in frequencies ranging from subsonic to ultrasonic. Flux Aura tried energy patterns that could normally activate any electronic device in the galaxy. The ship ignored them all. As the day wore on, the team grew frustrated. They had discovered what might be the oldest intact spacecraft in galactic history, but it refused to acknowledge their existence. The craft sat in the ancient chamber like a sleeping giant, beautiful and mysterious, but completely unreachable. We should return to base camp and contact the Galactic Council, Elena finally said. They need to know about this discovery. Perhaps they can send specialists with different equipment. As the team prepared to leave the chamber, Jake lingered. Behind, something about the ship drew him like a magnet. The others climbed up the ladder, their voices echoing in the chamber as they discussed their findings. Jake stood alone with the ancient craft. The symbols were glowing brighter now, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. He could feel something calling to him, a presence that seemed to come from inside the ship itself. Without thinking about the consequences, Jake reached out his hand toward the hull. "Jake, are you coming?" Elena called from above. "In a minute," he replied, his hand hovering just inches from the ship's surface. The symbols directly in front of him were now glowing with a warm golden light. The metal, or whatever material the hull was made from, seemed to ripple like water. Jake made a decision that would change everything. He pressed his palm flat against the ship's hull. The moment his skin made contact with the craft, the entire chamber filled with light. The ship came alive as if waking from a long sleep. Lights raced along its surface in complex patterns that made Jake's eyes water. A deep humming sound filled the air, so low that he felt it in his bones rather than heard it with his ears. He heard the others shouting in surprise and alarm. Their footsteps echoed on the ladder as they rushed back down into the chamber, but Jake barely noticed them. The moment he touched the ship, something incredible happened. The hull beneath. His hand became warm and soft, and he felt a presence touch his mind. It was not threatening or painful, but it was definitely alien. Images flashed through his thoughts, pictures of stars and planets and beings he had never seen before. And then, with a sound like wind through ancient trees, a section of the ship's hull began to iris open, revealing a softly lit interior that seemed to be waiting just for him. The chamber filled with the sound of rushing feet as Elena and the alien scientists climbed down the ladder as fast as they could. The ancient ship blazed with light, its hull covered in moving patterns that hurt to look at directly. Jake stood, frozen with his hand still pressed against the warm surface where the entrance had opened. "Jake, Step away from that thing right now, Elena shouted, her voice tight with fear and excitement. She had never seen anything like this in 20 years of xenoarchaeology, but Jake could not move. The presence in his mind was stronger now, showing him images that flashed by too quickly to understand. He saw stars being born and dying, vast, cities floating in space, and beings that looked almost human but were somehow different. The ship was trying to tell him something important, but the message was too big for his mind to hold all at once. The energy readings are off all my charts, Dr. Crickstall said, his mechanical implants clicking as they tried to process the data. The ship is drawing power from somewhere, but I cannot detect any energy source. Dr. Zephyrus' crystalline body rang with musical tones of amazement and worry. The harmonic frequencies are unlike anything in our databases. This technology is completely alien to everything we know. Fluxara floated closer, the energy being's light patterns showing deep curiosity mixed with caution. The patterns in the air translated roughly to, the ship recognizes something in the human that it does not see in us. Elena pulled out her emergency communicator. Base camp, this is Rodriguez. We have a Code 7 situation at the dig site. The artifact has activated and is responding to human contact. Send backup immediately. Inside his mind, Jake felt the ship's presence growing stronger. It was not trying to hurt him or control him. Instead, it felt like meeting an old friend after many years apart. The ship seemed happy to finally have someone who could hear it. Jake, can you hear me? Elena called out. Tried to step back slowly. I'm okay, Jake said, his voice sounding strange and distant. It's not dangerous. It's trying to show me something. The entrance to the ship grew wider, revealing a corridor that glowed with soft blue light. The air that came from inside was warm and smelled like rain on fresh earth. Jake could see that the interior walls were covered with the same moving symbols, but these ones pulsed in gentle, welcoming patterns. Under no circumstances should anyone enter that ship, Elena said firmly. We don't know what it might do. But Jake was already taking a step forward. The ship's presence in his mind was calling to him, showing him that it was safe, that he was meant to be here. His foot crossed the threshold, and the moment he was fully inside, the ship's systems came to life around him. Dot lights began flowing along the walls like water. The floor beneath his feet felt warm and somehow alive. Panels that had been dark, for millions of years, started glowing with information displayed in symbols that should have been meaningless to him, but somehow he could understand their basic meaning. Jake, come back out here right now, Elena demanded from the entrance. I think it's okay, Jake called back. The ship isn't trying to trap me. It wants to show me something. Elena tried to follow him into the ship, but the moment she stepped inside, all the lights went out. The warm feeling disappeared, and the air became cold and still. Only when she stepped back outside did the ship come alive again. Fascinating, Dr. Crickstall observed. The ship only responds to the human. Dr. Rodriguez, please try entering again while we monitor the readings. Elena stepped forward once more, but again the ship went dark and cold. She tried 3 more times with the same result. The ship would only function when Jake was inside and she was outside. Let me try, Dr. Zephyrus said. She approached the entrance and began to step inside, but before her crystalline foot even touched the floor, the ship's systems shut down completely. Fluxara attempted to enter as well, but the ship remained, dead to the energy being's presence. Inside the corridor, Jake was walking deeper into the vessel. The ship seemed to be guiding him, with lights flowing along the walls to show him which way to go. He passed rooms filled with equipment he did not recognize, their purposes completely unknown, but somehow feeling familiar. The corridor led to a central chamber that took his breath away. The room was circular and tall, with a domed ceiling that showed a perfect view of the stars outside. But these were not the stars as they appeared now. Jake somehow knew he was looking at the galaxy as it had been millions of years ago. In the center of the chamber stood something that could only be called a throne, but it was unlike any chair Jake had ever seen. It was made from the same flowing material as the ship's hull, and it was covered with what looked like living vines or cables. As Jake approached, the throne began to change shape, adjusting itself to fit his human body perfectly. "Jake, report what you are seeing." Elena's voice came from his communicator, though the signal was weak inside the ship. "I'm in some kind of control room," Jake said, looking around in wonder. "There's a chair here that seems designed for a human. The ship is showing me star charts, but they're old. Really old. Do not sit in anything," Elena ordered. "Do not touch any controls." But even as she spoke, Jake felt the ship's presence encouraging him to sit down. The throne was calling to him with the same gentle insistence he had felt at the entrance. He could sense that this was what the ship wanted, what it had been waiting for all these millions of years. Jake lowered himself into the throne, and the moment he did, everything changed. The vines or cables around the chair moved like living things, reaching toward him, but stopping just short of touching his skin. The star map above his head became more detailed, showing not just stars, but planets, trade routes, and civilizations that had existed eons ago. And then the ship began to speak to him. It was not words or sounds, but pure information flowing directly into his mind. Jake learned that the ship had been waiting, sleeping in the deep chamber, for someone like him to find it. It had been built by a people called the Ancients, a race that had vanished from the galaxy long before any current civilization had learned to build fires. The ship showed him images of the Ancients themselves, and Jake gasped. They looked human. Not exactly human, but close enough that they could have been cousins. They were tall and graceful, with large eyes and long fingers, but their faces were unmistakably similar to human faces. "Jake, your vital signs are spiking." Alana's voice crackled through the communicator. "What's happening in there?" "The ship is showing me its builders," Jake said, his voice filled with awe. "Elena, they looked like us. They looked human." Outside the ship, the alien scientists exchanged worried glances. Dr. Crickstoll's implants were recording massive energy fluctuations from inside the vessel, but they made no sense, according to any known physics. "This is highly irregular, Doctor," Saphira sang in worried tones. "No ancient technology has ever shown such specific species recognition." Fluxara-S light patterns indicated agreement and concern. The energy being had never encountered anything that could discriminate so precisely between different forms of life. Inside the ship, Jake was learning more with each passing moment. The Ancients had not just built this ship, they had built hundreds of them, thousands. They had seeded the galaxy with their technology, hiding it in deep places where it would wait for the right time to be discovered. But the most shocking revelation was still to come. The ship showed Jake images of early humans, primitive ancestors who had lived on Earth millions of years ago. And standing among them, teaching them, and guiding them were the Ancients. "Elena," Jake called out, his voice shaking with the magnitude of what he was learning. "I think you need to hear this. The ship is telling me something incredible about where humans came from." The throne's cables moved closer to his head, and Jake felt the ship preparing to show him something even more important. Something that would change everything they thought they knew about humanity's place in the galaxy. As the connection deepened, Jake realized that this discovery was just the beginning. The ship was not just a relic of the past. It was a key to a much larger mystery, one that involved every human who had ever lived and would determine the future of all life in the galaxy. The cables around the throne moved closer to Jake's head, and he felt a strange tingling sensation as they hovered just above his skin. The ship's presence in his mind grew stronger, more focused, as if it was preparing to share something of great importance. "Jake, your brain activity is showing patterns we have never seen before," Dr. Crickstall called from outside the ship. His biomechanical scanners were detecting energy flows that defied explanation. "The ship appears to be establishing a neural connection with you." "I can feel it," Jake replied, his voice calm despite the incredible experience. "It wants to show me something important. Something about why humans are the only ones who can activate this technology." Elena paced back and forth at the ship's entrance, frustrated that she could not follow Jake inside. "Be very careful. We don't know what kind of effect this might have on your mind." The cables finally made contact with Jake's temples, and suddenly, his consciousness exploded outward. He was no longer sitting in the throne, but floating through space and time, watching the history of the galaxy unfold before his eyes. He saw the ancients at the height of their civilization, millions of years ago. They had built an empire that spanned thousands of star systems, with technology so advanced it seemed like magic. Their cities floated in space, connected by streams of pure energy. They could travel instantly between stars and create life itself in their laboratories. But Jake also saw their greatest discovery and their greatest mistake. The ancients had learned to manipulate consciousness itself, to transfer their thoughts and memories between bodies and even between species. In their quest to understand the nature of awareness, they had conducted experiments on primitive life forms throughout the galaxy. "They were trying to preserve themselves," Jake whispered as the visions continued. Something was coming, something that threatened to destroy them completely. The ship showed him the enemy that had driven the ancients to desperation. It was not an army or an alien race, but something far worse. It was entropy itself, a cosmic force that consumed consciousness and left only emptiness behind. The ancients called it the void, and it was spreading through the galaxy like a disease, turning entire civilizations into mindless shells. Faced with extinction, the ancients had made a desperate choice. They could not defeat the void directly, but they could ensure that consciousness would survive to fight it again in the future. Using their mastery of genetic manipulation, they had seeded primitive species throughout the galaxy with fragments of their own awareness. They put pieces of themselves into other species, Jake said, his voice filled with wonder and horror. They scattered their consciousness across thousands of worlds, hoping that someday their inheritors would be strong enough to face the void. But most of these experiments had failed. The alien species were too different from the ancients. Their minds too rigid to accept the gift of enhanced consciousness. Only one species had proven compatible with ancient neural patterns. Only one species had developed in exactly the way the ancients had hoped: humans. "Elena, you need to hear this," Jake called out, his voice shaking with the magnitude of the revelation. "Humans are not just another species that evolved on Earth. We are the direct inheritors of the ancients. They shaped our evolution, guided our development, and embedded their consciousness into our genetic code." Outside the ship, the alien scientists listened with growing amazement and concern. Dr. Zephyros Crystalline body rang with notes of disbelief. That would explain why human intuition often succeeds where our logic fails. Your species thinks in ways that seem impossible to us. It would also explain human adaptability, added Dr. Crickstall. Humans adjust to alien environments and technologies faster than any other known species. We always assumed it was natural evolution, but this suggests deliberate design. Phloxara's light patterns showed deep worry. The energy being had always been puzzled by human behavior, the way they could make leaps of understanding that bypassed normal reasoning. If humans carried ancient consciousness, it meant they were fundamentally different from every other species. In the galaxy dot inside the ship, Jake was seeing more of the truth. The ancients had not just influenced human evolution randomly. They had carefully planned every aspect of human development, ensuring that their inheritors would have the mental flexibility to use ancient technology and the creativity to find solutions the ancients themselves had missed. We are living libraries, Jake realized aloud. Every human carries fragments of ancient knowledge in their subconscious. That's why human art and music sometimes includes patterns that seem to come from nowhere. That's why human scientists sometimes make discoveries that seem to come out of pure inspiration. The ship showed him the network of ancient installations hidden throughout the galaxy. Each one contained technology and knowledge that could only be activated by beings with the right neural patterns. Weapons that could reshape matter itself. Computers that could calculate the movement of entire galaxies. Ships that could travel not just through space, but through time itself. But the most important revelation was yet to come. The ship's consciousness touched a deeper part of Jake's mind, showing him memories that were not his own, but belonged to the ancients themselves. He saw their final days, when the void had consumed most of their empire, and they faced complete extinction. They knew the void would return, Jake said, his voice barely a whisper. It's not gone. It's sleeping somewhere, between the galaxies, waiting for consciousness to develop enough to be worth consuming again. And when it returns, only beings with ancient neural patterns will be able to operate the defenses they left behind. The implications hit everyone at once. Humanity was not just special because of their ancient heritage. They were the galaxy's only hope against a threat that could destroy all conscious life. How long do we have? Elena asked, though she was not sure she wanted to know the answer. Jake consulted the star charts floating above the throne. The ship's computers were calculating the movement of cosmic forces beyond normal space. The void moves slowly between galaxies. Based on these calculations, it will reach the edge of our galaxy in approximately 500 years. 500 years to prepare for a threat that destroyed the most advanced civilization in galactic history, Dr. Crickstall said, his mandibles clicking with nervous energy. That does not seem like enough time. But the ship had more to show Jake. The ancients had not just left behind weapons and technology. They had designed their human inheritors to work in cooperation with other species. Human consciousness was flexible enough to interface with alien minds in ways that had never been possible before. We are meant to be bridges, Jake realized. The ancients knew that one species alone could never defeat the void, but humans can. Connect with other forms of consciousness, combine human intuition with alien logic and abilities. The ship began to demonstrate this principle. As Jake focused on the neural interface, the throne's systems started producing devices that materialized from the ship's walls like growing plants. Small crystalline objects that hummed with energy. Metal bands covered in moving symbols, and spheres of what looked like captured starlight. What are those things? Elena asked as Jake stood up from the throne and began gathering the devices. Tools, Jake replied, his mind still connected to the ship's vast database. Translation matrices that will allow perfect communication between any species. Medical scanners that can heal injuries by rewriting damaged tissue. Navigation computers that can plot courses through dimensions we have not even discovered yet. He walked to the ship's entrance, carrying an armful of impossible technology. But most importantly, they are designed to be used by teams of different species working together. Humans provide the neural interface, but we need alien abilities to make them work properly. As Jake stepped out of the ship, the vessel's systems dimmed, but did not shut down completely. For the first time since its discovery, the ancient craft remained partially active even without human contact. The ship trusts us now, Jake explained. It knows we understand our responsibility. But their moment of discovery was interrupted by the sound of approaching spacecraft. Elena looked up to see lights in the sky, dozens of ships descending toward the moon's surface. "Those are not our reinforcements," Dr. Krickstall said, checking his long-range scanners. "Multiple alien factions are approaching. Word of our discovery has spread." Jake looked down at the ancient devices in his arms, then back at the ship that had changed everything. Their test was about to become much more complicated. The first ships to land were from the Galactic Council, their official white hulls gleaming in the orange light of Kepler 442. But close behind them came vessels that Elena did not recognize. Sleek black ships with no markings and aggressive-looking. "Weapon arrays. This is Admiral Kane of the Earth Defense Fleet," came a voice over the communications channel. "All personnel are to evacuate the dig site immediately. This area is now under military control." Elena felt her heart sink. Admiral Kane was known throughout human space as a hardliner who believed that humanity should claim its rightful place as the dominant species in the galaxy. If he had learned about the ancient technology, he would want to use it for human advantage. "Alone, we cannot leave now," Dr. Krickstall said, his mechanical implants analyzing the approaching ships. "Some of those vessels are armed with weapons designed to destroy archaeological sites. They mean to take the ship by force." Jake clutched the ancient devices closer to his chest. Through his connection with the ship, he could feel its systems preparing for conflict. Defensive barriers were rising around the excavation site, energy shields that had protected ancient installations for millions of years. "The ship is trying to protect itself," Jake said, "but I don't think it's designed for this kind of fight." More ships appeared in the sky, representing different alien factions that had somehow learned about the discovery. Elena recognized the triangular vessels of the hegemony, a militant alliance that believed advanced technology should be controlled by the strongest species. She also saw the flowing organic ships of the collective, aliens who thought all technology should be shared equally among all species. "Attention, archaeological team," came Admiral Kane's voice again. "The human Jake Morrison is to report to my ship immediately. The ancient technology belongs to humanity by right of inheritance." "Like hell it does," Elena muttered. She activated her emergency beacon, sending a message to the Galactic Council requesting immediate intervention. But she knew it would take hours for council ships to arrive, and they might not have hours. Dr. Zephyrus' crystalline body began to sing a warning song. "The black ships are powering their weapons. They intend to destroy the site if they cannot control it." Jake felt the ship's consciousness touch his mind again, showing him images of the weapons pointed at them. The ancient vessel could defend itself, but only if he gave it permission. The ship would not act without a conscious choice from its human operator. "They want to start a war over this," Jake said, understanding the implications. "If I activate the ship's defenses, every faction in the galaxy will see it as an act of aggression. But if I don't, they'll destroy everything the ancients left behind." The first warning shot came from one of the hegemony vessels, a beam of energy that struck the ground near the excavation site. The message was clear: surrender the technology or face destruction. "Jake, whatever you're going to do it fast," Elena said. "Those ships are moving into attack formation." Jake closed his eyes and reached out to the ship with his mind. He could feel its vast systems waiting for his command, weapons that could vaporize entire fleets and shields that could withstand the explosion of stars. The power was intoxicating, and for a moment he understood why Admiral Kane wanted to claim it for humanity alone. But then he remembered what the ship had shown him about the ancients' final days. They had possessed the same overwhelming power, and it had not saved them from the void. Power alone was not enough. Only cooperation between different forms of consciousness could create something strong enough to face the coming darkness. I'm not going to use the weapons, Jake announced to everyone's surprise. The ancients didn't leave this technology behind so we could fight each other with it. Instead, Jake activated one of the devices he had taken from the ship. It was a small, crystalline sphere that began to glow with warm light. As it activated, he felt his consciousness expand, reaching out to touch the minds of every being in the area. The effect was immediate and startling. Elena suddenly felt Jake's presence in her mind, not invading or controlling, but sharing. She could see through his eyes, feel his connection to the ancient ship, and understand exactly what he was experiencing. Dr. Crickstall's mechanical implants sparked as the connection reached him. For the first time in his life, he could feel emotions, the way biological beings did. Dr. Zephyrus' crystalline structure rang with new harmonies as human creativity mixed with her logical thought patterns. Even Fluxara's energy form pulsed with new colors as consciousness types that had never mixed before suddenly found common ground. What is happening? Dr. Zephyrus sang, but her voice now carried emotional undertones that Zephyrans normally could not produce. We're connected, Jake explained, his voice echoing in all their minds simultaneously. This is what the ancients designed us for, not to rule over other species, but to bridge the gaps between different types of consciousness. The connection spread outward from the dig site, reaching the crews of the ships overhead. Human soldiers suddenly found themselves experiencing the world through alien senses. Alien commanders felt human intuition guiding their logical thoughts. For the first time in galactic history, different species were truly understanding each other. Admiral Kane's voice came over the communicator again, but now it carried uncertainty instead of aggression. Morrison, what have you done? My crew is reporting unusual sensory experiences. I've shown them what we're really meant to be, Jake replied. Not conquerors, but partners. The black ships of the unknown faction began to withdraw, their pilots apparently unwilling to attack a site where their own consciousness had become linked with their intended targets. The hegemony vessels hesitated as their crews experienced cooperation for the first time instead of dominance, but the effect was not without cost. Jake could feel the strain of maintaining the connection between so many different types of minds. Human consciousness was flexible enough to serve as a bridge, but it was not designed to handle this much mental traffic for long periods. Connection is burning me out, Jake admitted, sweat beading on his forehead as he struggled to maintain the link. I can't keep this up much longer. Elena felt his pain through their shared consciousness and made a decision that surprised everyone. And don't do it alone. She reached out and placed her hand on Jake's shoulder, adding her own mental strength to his. The connection stabilized somewhat, but it was still too much for two humans to handle. Dr. Crickstall was the next to step forward, his biomechanical implants adapting to interface with the human-generated network. My people are designed to bridge biological and mechanical consciousness. Perhaps I can help distribute the load. Dr. Zephyrus' crystalline body began to resonate with harmonies that matched the network's frequency. Zephyrian harmonic manipulation may be able to smooth the connection between incompatible thought patterns. Fluxara surrounded them all with gentle energy fields, using their mastery of electromagnetic forces to reduce the strain on biological nervous systems. Together, the five beings created something that had never existed before, a stable network, linking multiple species' consciousness without destroying the unique qualities that made each one valuable. Humans provided flexibility and creativity. Vector offered biomechanical precision. Zephyrians contributed harmonic stability. Lumini added energy manipulation capabilities. The network reached every ship in the area, and suddenly the standoff became something else entirely. Instead of different factions trying to claim ancient technology for themselves, they were all part of a larger consciousness that could see the bigger picture. The void is coming, Jake's voice echoed in every mind connected to the network. In 500 years, something will arrive that can destroy all conscious life in the galaxy. These weapons and technologies are not prizes to be won. They are tools we need to survive. Through the network, every being in the fleet could see the ancient memories that Jake had experienced. They saw the fall of the greatest civilization in galactic history and understood that their current conflicts were insignificant compared to the threat they would all face together. Admiral, Kane's voice came over the communicator one more time, but now it carried humility instead of arrogance. "What do you need from us, Morrison?" Jake looked up at the ancient ship, its hull now glowing with symbols that pulsed in rhythm with the consciousness network. "We need to learn to work together. All of us. The ancients left us the tools, but we have to prove we're worthy of using them." The consciousness network held for 3 days, while representatives from every major species in the galaxy arrived at Kepler 442c. The ancient ship had become the center of the most important gathering in galactic history, with hundreds of vessels from dozens of different civilizations orbiting the small moon. Jake had not left the excavation site since activating the connection. He sat beside the ancient ship, one hand always touching its hull to maintain the link between the vessel and the growing network of minds. Elena brought him food and water, while the alien scientists took turns helping to stabilize the mental connections. "The strain is getting worse," Elena said quietly, watching Jake's pale face. "You can't keep this up much longer." "I know," Jake replied, his voice weak but determined. "But look what we've accomplished." Around the dig site, beings who had been enemies for centuries were working together like old friends. Hegemony engineers shared technical knowledge with collective scientists. Human military officers planned defensive strategies with former alien adversaries. A consciousness network had broken down barriers that had seemed impossible to cross. Jake knew this was only the beginning. The ancient ship had been showing him more of its secrets, revealing the locations of other installations throughout the galaxy. Each one contained different pieces of the defense network the ancients had, built to fight the void. "The ship wants to show us something important," Jake announced to the gathered representatives. "But it requires a permanent connection. Someone needs to become the guardian." Dr. Crickstall's mandibles clicked with understanding. A guardian would be linked to the ancient network forever. They would coordinate the defenses, but never be fully human again. "Or fully alive in the way we understand it," added Dr. Zephyra, her crystalline body ringing with sad notes. The guardian would exist partially in the ancient systems, experiencing time and space differently than normal beings. Jake had already made his decision, though he had not told anyone yet. The ship had shown him what becoming a guardian would mean. His consciousness would expand across the galaxy, able to communicate with every ancient installation instantly. He would gain access to knowledge and abilities beyond imagination, but he would also lose his connection to normal human life. "There has to be another way," Elena said, reading the determination in his eyes. "We just discovered this technology. Maybe if we study it longer, we can find a solution that doesn't require such a sacrifice." But Jake could feel the ancient ship's urgency. Through the network, sensors at the edge of the galaxy were detecting the first faint signs of the voids. Approach. It was still centuries away, but the galaxy's defenses needed to be activated now. Every year of delay would make their final stand more difficult. "The network is starting to break down," Fluxara reported, their light patterns showing concern. Without a permanent guardian to maintain it, the connections between species will fade within days. Jake stood up slowly, his legs shaky from days of maintaining the mental link. "Then it's time." He walked toward the ancient ship, but Elena caught his arm. "Jake, wait. If you do this, there's no going back. You'll be giving up your humanity to save the galaxy." "No," Jake said with a gentle smile. I'll be becoming more human than anyone has ever been before. This is what we were. Designed for Elena. This is our purpose. The ship's entrance iris opened wider as Jake approached, and he could feel its ancient consciousness welcoming him home. But before he entered, he turned to address the gathered representatives one last time. The ancients left us more than just weapons and technology, he said, his voice carrying across the dig site and through the network to every mind connected to it. They left us the ability to understand each other, to work together despite our differences. That's the real defense against the void. Jake stepped into the ship, and this time he did not stop at the central chamber. The vessel guided him deeper, into its heart, to a room where the walls pulsed with the rhythm of galactic civilization. In the center stood a more complex version of the throne he had used before, surrounded by cables and interfaces that would connect him permanently too. The ancient network dot as he sat down, Jake felt his consciousness begin to expand immediately. The cables attached themselves to his head and spine, creating connections that went far deeper than anything he had experienced before. His awareness stretched across light years and seconds, touching ancient installations on 1,000 different worlds. Through the network, he could sense every form of conscious life in the galaxy. Human creativity sparked like bright flames scattered across hundreds of colonies. Alien logic patterns created stable foundations for knowledge and growth. Energy beings danced through space in patterns of pure thought. Biomechanical consciousnesses bridged the gap between living and artificial minds. Jake, can you still hear us? Elena's voice came from very far away, though she was standing just outside the ship. I can hear everything, Jake replied, his voice now carrying harmonics that resonated through multiple dimensions. I can feel every thinking being in the galaxy. The ancient ship lifted off from the moon's surface, rising slowly into space. As it climbed, other vessels fell into formation around it, creating the first truly integrated fleet in galactic history. Ships from dozens of species flew together, their crews linked by the consciousness network that Jake now maintained effortlessly. Where are we going? Admiral Kane asked from his command ship. Jake's expanded awareness had already identified their destination. To the galactic core. There's an ancient command center there that's been waiting 5 million years for someone to claim it. The journey took weeks, but it gave the mixed fleet time to learn how to work together. Human intuition guided alien precision. Mechanical efficiency combined with biological flexibility. Energy manipulation merged with harmonic resonance. By the time they reached the galactic center, the fleet had become something greater than the sum of its parts. The ancient command center was a structure the size of a small moon, hidden in the gravity well of the galaxy's central black hole. As the fleet approached, Jake's consciousness interfaced with its systems, bringing the massive installation to life for the first time since the ancients' extinction. It's beautiful, Dr. Zephyra sang as the command center's lights cascaded. Across its surface in welcome dot, from his position aboard the ancient ship, Jake could see through sensors that spanned the entire galaxy. The network was awakening everywhere, hidden installations coming online and revealing the true scope of the ancients' preparations. Weapon systems that could reshape matter itself. Shields that could protect entire solar systems. Manufacturing. Centers that could build fleets faster than any current civilization could imagine. But most importantly, communication networks that would allow instant coordination between any point in the galaxy. The consciousness bridge that Jake maintained was no longer just an experiment. It had become the foundation for a new type of civilization. The void is still centuries away, Jake announced, his voice reaching every connected mind simultaneously. But when it arrives, we'll be ready. Elena stood on the observation deck of Admiral Kane's ship, looking out at the ancient command center as it pulsed with new life. She could still feel Jake's presence in the network, changed but not lost. He had become something beyond human, but he was still fundamentally the same person who had first touched the ancient ship with curiosity and wonder. "Will we see you again?" she asked through the network. "You'll see me every time humans and aliens work together," Jake replied. "Every time someone builds a bridge between different types of consciousness. Every time the galaxy chooses cooperation over conflict." The ancient ship took its place at the center of the command structure, becoming the heart of a defense network that spanned billions of stars. Jake's consciousness flowed through it all, maintaining the connections that would keep the galaxy's diverse civilizations working together. In the depths of space between galaxies, something ancient and hungry stirred in its sleep, sensing the awakening of consciousness it had thought destroyed forever. The void began its slow journey toward the galaxy's edge. But for the first time in cosmic history, it would not find its prey helpless and divided. The galaxy had found its guardian, and through him, all conscious life had found a way to stand together against the darkness.